If I move from here and go over there and sit with my Democrat friends, which will make them real nervous, does Google track my movement? Does Google, through this phone, know that I have moved here and moved over to the left? It's either yes or no.
Not by default. There may be a Google service which you've opted in to use, and if
So Google knows that I am moving over there. It's not a trick question. You know, you make $100 million a year, you ought to be able to answer that question. Does Google know through this phone that I am moving over there and sitting next to Mr. Johnson, which would make him real nervous? It's his question. It's yes or no.
I won't be able to answer without looking at.
You can't say yes or no.
Without knowing more details.
If I walk over there and sit next to Mr. Johnson and carry my phone, does Google know that I was sitting here and then I moved over there?
You're welcome anytime, Judge.
Yes or no?
I genuinely don't know without knowing.
I'm shocked you don't know. I think Google obviously does. Are you familiar with the General Data Protection Regulation by the European Union?
Very familiar. We've worked over 18 months on it.
And the European Union is protecting the right of privacy of the people in Europe. We don't have such a law in the United States, do we?
Congressman, we've supported and
We do not have such a law in the United States, do we?
we don't have a comprehensive user data privacy legislation.
Are you familiar with
It's
House
important.
Resolution 1039? It's a resolution that I've introduced that would basically adopt some of the European practices in America and give consumers in the United States the right of privacy. Are you familiar with that legislation?
No, but I'm happy.
I'll give you a copy before you leave. It's ironic to me that the United States, supposed to be the country in the world that protects privacy of individuals more than anybody else, we are playing second fiddle to the Europeans. They protect the privacy of their folks more than we do. And I think the United States Congress needs to move in a direction to allow citizens to opt in to the dissemination of their information rather than opt out, which seems to be the current law. As Mr. Cohen has stated, I think most Americans don't know all the things that this phone can do. And one thing that it can do is disseminate information really that we are unaware of to all different people out there. The United States should change the rules and make it so that we as consumers opt in. Otherwise, that information is not disseminated. That is just my opinion. What does Google view as objectionable?
I think there are, if you're referring to our content policies, we do publish. There are areas, for example, categories for YouTube like violent extremism, pornography, child safety, fraudulent activities. So we define categories.
What are extreme political views? You find those objectionable? Not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying, what are those extreme political views?
We think it's important. Google and YouTube are platforms which support
So
freedom.
what are those extreme political views that you find objectionable?
We don't define any political views as objectionable.
So you let all political views come on, even objectionable political views?
We have areas which we have defined as not allowed on our platforms. For example, on YouTube, there are clear definitions around hate speech, but it's defined as speech which has the primary goal of inciting hatred or violence towards groups of people.
You would agree that hate speech has many different definitions depending on who's doing the defining, wouldn't you agree?
We understand it's a subjective area, could be open to interpretation, but we define it and we publish our definition of it, and we.
Do you believe that Google has been brought out here in some question is biased?
Congressman, it's really important to me that we approach our work in an unbiased.
Do you believe that Google is biased? It's either yes or no.
No, not in our approach.
Now, it is a private company, is it not?
Yes, it is.
It's not the government. Google is not the government, is it?
Not the last I checked, no.
You want the government to regulate Google?
Today, we are subject to a lot of regulation across many different agencies.
But you're not subject to the definition of what bias is by the government coming in and saying, Google cannot be biased, and we, the government, are going to decide what's biased and what's not biased. You're not subject to that philosophy, are you?
Not today.
I hope we don't get to that point where government tries to come in and regulate what bias is, and because this is an independent, free company. I think that is, Google may have, to me, it's just a part of it doing business like any other media outlet. They can say what they want. I've gone over time, Mr. Chairman. I have some other questions I'd like to submit for the record.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I might, the gentleman is certainly welcome to join me on this side of the aisle and switch parties at any time.
It's getting a little late in his career.
That's right.
I will just respond to the gentleman from Texas and say that we will be submitting questions in writing to you, Mr. Pichai, including the ones from the gentleman from Texas, and we would ask that you answer them promptly.
Be very happy to.
Thank you very much. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Deutsch, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pichai, I believe that the platforms can and should do a better job preventing people from using services to engage in illegal activity. Tim Cook recently said platforms and algorithms that promise to improve our lives can actually magnify our worst human tendencies. Some of your peers are publicly reckoning with the ways their companies are not neutral platforms and are accountable for the content on the services. In congressional testimony, Mark Zuckerberg said his company is responsible for the content